Okay, welcome Year 2 Forensics. Today we are doing blood testing. So the first method I'm going to use are these called hemosticks. I use these at the crime scene. The benefit of using these is that they're easily carried around, can go in the van, don't take up much space, and they are fairly sensitive. Okay, so they detect fairly small amounts of blood. So they're easy to use. I'll show you. We've got here a negative and a positive blood card. So the hemosticks on them have an expiry date. Obviously these are out of date, so they would not be used at a crime scene, but we can use them in class, but we do need to determine whether they're working correctly. So we've got our known negative and our known positive for blood, which we've put blood on ourselves. Okay, so I'm going to take a swab, which I've wetted. Again, the swabs have an expiry date, and the same as the hemosticks, you wouldn't use these at a crime scene, but they're fine for classroom purposes. So what I would do is I've already wetted this. You would use sterile water to wet the end of the swab. Okay, place it onto the square. This is TMB, this square. Okay, I'm actually going to use the same swab just because I know I've wetted it. Okay, I'm going to rub it along the area of known blood and then place it onto the square. You can see it was going green already. Okay. So you can see the square has gone from yellow to a dark green colour. Now the hemosticks can be used quantitatively. It's not suggested we do because it's fairly inaccurate, but you can tell that that's quite a dark colour. So that is probably undiluted blood in a fairly reasonable quantity, fine for DNA testing. If we got a much lighter colour, we'd probably be more unsure that it was blood. Okay. So after this test, this is a presumptive test, same as the one we're going to do next. So all we can say after having this positive test is that it is presumed blood or apparent blood. That's really important. The only way of being able to tell for certain if this is red blood is to look for red blood cells under a microscope. Okay, so until we look at blood under a microscope, we can only say that this is apparent or presumed blood. Okay, so when you write up this piece of evidence, it is a presumptive test. Okay, so that's the hemosticks finished, so we'll move those there. The next test we've got is the Castle-Meyer test, KM, okay, where we use a reduced phenolphthalein solution followed by hydrogen peroxide. Okay, now as you can see, this one's covered in foil. It is also cold, it's been in the fridge. So when comparing to the hemosticks and evaluating their uses, the KM test has to be kept in the fridge and avoiding sunlight. Okay, so not as useful at a crime scene, a little bit harder to maintain, obviously needs to be kept in the cool box in your van. So, and it obviously requires 2 steps, so slightly more difficult than the simplicity of the hemosticks. Definitely something to bear in mind when you're evaluating the use of the 2 tests. Okay, so again, I'm going to rub it on my known negative. Okay, and then I'm going to take reduced phenolphthalein. You only need a couple of drops of each one. And we're expecting this to be a negative. Don't want to lay that down. That's it. Make sure it's slightly propped up. Okay, so you can see there's no colour change there. Still the same colour as previously. Okay, so place that back in there. So I'm going to use another swab. I'm just going to wet it. So this one isn't open, which you should always use for your crime scene samples. Okay, we should always check the expiry date and check that it's sealed. So I'm going to crack this one. I'm going to wet it slightly, and then again I'm going to rub it on my known positive this time. Okay, so a couple of drops of phenolphthalein. It's actually reduced phenolphthalein. Okay, and a couple of drops of hydrogen peroxide. Now it's really faint, but there is a pink colour there. What I may do, just to show you the strength of the colour. Okay, see if we can get a slightly stronger colour. Okay. Yeah, and obviously that's going to be a lot better. Okay, so the pink colour is there, as it is here. Okay. You have to observe it, I would say, within 10 seconds, because eventually it will all go pink. Okay, so it is a time-bound test where you need to examine the swab and observe a fairly rapid colour change to the characteristic phenolphthalein pink that you see there. Again, the same as the hemosticks, it's a presumptive test. So remember to say, as part of your evidence, it's apparent or presumed blood in your witness statement. It would not be confirmatory until you see red blood cells under a microscope. This can then be DNA tested. It won't have damaged. You would still be able to get a DNA sample from here, or from your crime scene sample that you're testing. You would take an additional swab and you would take a sample of the apparent blood that you've now achieved a positive presumptive test for, and you would send this for DNA testing for the database. Unless you have a suspect, then you would do a comparison test with one person. Okay, so that's your blood testing. The other option that you'll see from my PowerPoint or from your own research is luminol, which is worth comparing to these two. And LMG, leukomalachite green, is the other one I'd like you to consider in your evaluation.